Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another CattleTrace Conversation. My name is Kyler Langbart, and I serve as a program manager for U.S. CattleTrace, based out of Kansas, but with membership across the United States, representing over 150 individuals from 22 states who are all interested in being a driving force in animal disease traceability in the United States. These CattleTrace Conversations are designed to give us opportunities to have casual one-on-one conversations with technology partners, industry leaders, and others who are working alongside us in our efforts to provide animal disease traceability in their own unique ways. And today we have a very special partner of ours, someone who some of you might be familiar with if you've been interacting with U.S. CattleTrace in the past, or maybe seen one of our past webinars that we put on. Today, we're excited to be joined by Phil Lawler of Fort Supply Technologies. Phil, I'll go ahead, throw it to you. Let you introduce yourselves. And can you describe a little bit about what Fort Supply Technologies is and how you currently interact with producers in the marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kyler, thanks for inviting us to participate in the CattleTrace Conversations. You guys are an important organization to the longevity of the industry, and we're glad to be a partner. Fort Supply Technologies, we provide precision livestock management solutions, and we strive to have those solutions be relatively easy to implement and to maintain. And we follow a 3-step process with each of our solutions. And that 3-step process is to utilize precision identification, which is electronic identification, we believe is imperative, to have autonomous or semi-autonomous data capture. And that is simply to limit human data entry as much as possible. All projections are that human data entry results in 5% or more data entry errors. And so when you start compounding that across multiple head and across multiple years, you got a lot of errors. So we try to really simplify that data capture process with different devices and software applications. And then there's the data access and analytics. Having access to your data at the point of use to make decisions chute side when you're preg checking on, do we keep this cow or not? To make decisions about nutrition, decisions about vaccinations, all the different decisions that producers and feed yards and everybody else along the supply chain has to make on a daily and weekly basis. We work with producers on through the supply chain, right on up to packers, really every level of the modern day beef supply chain. And you asked my role. I'm a VP of Commercial Operations, so I manage our marketing and sales initiatives within Fort Supply Technologies.
Well, that's excellent, Phil. Thanks so much for that brief explanation. I know Fort Supply does a lot more than that, but I appreciate you kind of hitting the high points of what you've done in the past. And as you've been on the company and as we've worked with you as partners, we've seen tremendous growth in these areas of data management and efficiency of processes. I think there's been compounding interest from producers who maybe are more interested in one aspect, as well as just general feel for what this kind of technology can bring. And this kind of technology brings with it a ton of questions, as we've seen, specifically when you think about the technology that could really make this all happen, thinking about that EID that you mentioned earlier. And so can you kind of talk about what EID systems Fort Supply Technology uses and how they integrate into a system? That's one of the major questions we get asked from producers is, thinking about low frequency and ultra high frequency technologies. How are they utilized in a system like that?
Yeah, so when the 4 different solutions that we provide, one of them is our Value Tracker solution, and Value Tracker is helping any type of operation capture the data that's valuable to them. For a seed stock operation, it's capturing and maintaining all that genetic information in the EPDs and decisions about their breeding data they'll use to make decisions about their breeding program. For a commercial cow-calf operation, capturing all that value-added data that might make those calves qualify for a natural program, an NHTC program, or a more demanding branded beef program that has specific requirements. And the other solutions of asset tracker and dual tracker, those solutions they're capturing the presence of the animal at that location at that time. And a great example of asset trackers that we recently did a border crossing traceability project with cattle coming across from Mexico into the U.S. And those cattle get disseminated out to several feed yards and then move on to the packing plants in the U.S. And it's historically been a challenge to track those cattle individually at the speed of commerce coming across the border, getting loaded onto trucks and delivered to those feed yards. I will just, I'll throw a little carrot out there that we were able to show 99 to 100% traceability, readability of those ultra high frequency ID tags and the cattle that were wearing them at different phases at different checkpoints, let's call them, along that process. We're going to have a video on that up on our website really soon. That's really been just phase one of that project, because we are going to continue to track them. We tracked them through the border crossing station at Santa Teresa, New Mexico. We tracked them onto the trucks, and we tracked them in delivery into the feed yard. And we were able to, as I said, get 99 to 100% read rates at the different checkpoints. And later on this year, we'll be tracking them through leaving the feed yard and on through to the packer as well. But the precision identification, that electronic ID, it's really a critical component to be able to manage a high volume of data on a large group of cattle, or even on a small group of cattle, because small groups of cattle have smaller personnel resources and still have to make important decisions. And we are a fan as a company of ultra high frequency, because low frequency or high frequency, ultra high frequency can be used for identifying individual animals. Both will work to read a tag 6 to 12 inches away. But then when you want to start monitoring those cattle on the move, you want to start monitoring them in groups. Ultra high frequency, having the ability to expand that read range out with the equipment configured properly to 25, 30 feet away. Now you can read them as they're literally running onto a truck, as they're running down through a 15 foot wide alleyway onto a 15 foot wide scale, 15 by 25, 30 foot scale, and not have to restrict them, not have to alter their movements whatsoever. True speed of commerce. No special facilities required. So that technology, that ultra high frequency technology, is used in a multitude of other industries, whereas low frequency is really only used for livestock identification at this point. Suffice it to say, we believe UHF is the new and improved technology.
Yeah. And I think we've discovered that speed of commerce is incredibly important to every link of the supply chain who we're working with. But we also recognize that there are still producers in the United States who are frequently use low frequency and are as entrenched in that. So we use CattleTrace can accept both those forms of data. And as we continue in the future and as technology evolves, we hope we can continue to work towards whatever technology comes next as well, which is why we,
and Kyler, likewise, our value tracker solution can utilize low frequency or high frequency. We have many producers that are putting a low frequency tag in one ear and a high frequency tag in the other, so they've got redundancy in that electronic ID. And even pairing it up with a visual tag that might be a lot tag in a feed lot, or it might be a different color scheme visual tag for each year of that they're, when was it calf born, look at the color of the tag and they know what year it was born. That can all those forms of ID can be paired together in the software. So whichever tag is appropriate for the scenario that you're running the cattle through, you can identify them. And low frequency is an option with our fast herd software as well. Yeah,
thanks for clarifying that. I think both of those technologies will be continue to be important as we move forward. And the technology that comes next, we're all thinking about as well, both for supply and U.S. CattleTrace. So I think producers can continue to look forward to what comes next on that front. Right. I think the other question we get a lot from producers, and I'm sure you do as well, when it comes to the data management and the efficiency and the verified program side of things, is right now, traceability means a lot to a lot of people. Obviously, for U.S. CattleTrace, traceability comes down to true animal disease traceability. And,
right.
and that's our number one focus as U.S. CattleTrace and what we're hoping to always stay true towards. But obviously for Fort Supply Technologies, there's lots of assets or aspects to that word traceability. So can you kind of describe the ways that you see traceability, Phil, in the industry today and how maybe they pair together as we move forward with more producers becoming involved in this type of technology?
Absolutely. We think of traceability really as a two-sided coin. A quarter is a quarter. There's a heads and a tails. There's the disease traceability, which is an important aspect for the security of our industry as a whole. But then there's also the food traceability. And food traceability might be simply knowing on a daily basis what inventory do I have in my operation that fits these different criteria, so I know what to sell and what I can sell and when I can sell it, or what else I'm going to be selling cattle that fit this criteria. I've got to go back to my suppliers and replace them next week, next month. And then there's the more detailed version of food traceability, which has more recently gone beyond just the process verification programs on into a lot of branded beef products that those products are making more specific marketing claims and therefore requires even more intense data capture by producers and backgrounders of feed yards that want to participate in those evolving beef supply chains or channels. And so what we see with our solutions is that the food traceability is really driving the momentum. It's driving the adoption of the technology because beef operations at all levels, the return is more tangible to them by capturing more information that helps them more effectively market their end product, which is beef. And it's just a great coincidence that the byproduct of that is send the data along to US CattleTrace as well. It's a very simple data set. We send you guys a file every night for many, many of our clients. It's a time and a date stamp, a latitude, a longitude, and an ID. There's nothing nefarious that can be done with that information, and except to allow government officials, when the need arises, to track the movement of animals associated or that may have been exposed with a disease outbreak. So food traceability, really driving it. Disease traceability is the happy beneficiary.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning that, Phil. We do our best to make sure that we have the data that we need to make a successful traceback, but none that could compromise any individual rancher or operation. And so I appreciate you mentioned that, Phil, and that's what we work towards as US CattleTrace. And I guess the other question that we get asked quite a bit from producers, and we have a very specific answer from the animal disease traceability sides of things, but when someone comes to us, they often ask, okay, so I know a little bit about the tags, which we discussed, and then I get to know a little bit more about traceability and what it can do for me outside of, both food traceability and animal disease traceability. So what would you recommend the first step be for a producer who's interested in this technology? And what should start them on this path of potentially using your software and traceability technology on their operation?
Yeah, great question, Kyler. The new technology is always intriguing and intimidating at the same time. We're all guilty of maybe not all of us. I know I'm guilty of holding on to my cell phone, my smartphone, for a year or two longer than I probably should because it works. I'm comfortable with it, and then you decide, no, I need to adapt to the new technology, and then you get that new smartphone. It has more bells, more whistles. You can be more efficient with it. You can access more information with it, and you wonder, why did I take so long to make that change? Adopting precision livestock management technology is that same process, and so what we'd like to do is sit down in person or virtually with an operation, producer, auction, background or feed yard, packer, doesn't really matter. Talk about their operation, really understand what their current situation is, what their objectives are, what their pain points are. And through the combination of our precision UHF ear tags, the data capture devices, We have both mobile and stationary autonomous reading equipment, and really it depends on the type of operation and sometimes the size of an operation that dictates which is the more appropriate route to go. If you have 400 or 500 cows, you might start off with some handheld equipment. If you have 4,000 or 5,000 cows, you're processing enough cattle that you need to free up hands and have the fixed equipment that reads the tags and integrates with the scale head and does everything else that it can do without a cowboy or cowgirl having to stand there doing something. And so right on to then how are you managing that data? There's still a tremendous amount of data being managed in spreadsheets. And it's difficult to look year over year to, spreadsheets, it's a grid format, and going beyond that grid format when decisions need to be made can be challenging. And so we have cloud-based software that the data is then captured and can be managed the way that operation needs to manage it, and it can be shared the way that operation needs to share it, very securely and permission-based. And so we will talk about those attributes of their operation, their goals, their needs, their pain points, and then recommend a combination of the 1, 2, 3 step process that is appropriate for them. But it starts with us listening.
Yeah, and I think that's key too, Phil. Yeah, I think oftentimes we have producers who maybe don't take the necessary time to really have those conversations with their providers or make a detailed plan for what this technology can do for them. This is an awesome technology that can both, as Phil mentioned, make some great strides for your individual operation, as well as help with larger issues in the beef cattle industry, like animal disease traceability. But I think it first takes that good planning and a good mission of what you want to do with that technology. And that's why hopefully us at US CattleTrace, as well as our partners like Fort Supply Technologies, can help you get to that mission. But it just takes a little bit of planning to make sure it not only works for you, but it works for the greater industry as well.
And Kyler, I will say too that if someone knows that they need to make some changes in their operation technology-wise, and they are concerned about implementing it, there's going to be somebody involved with the operation that will take hold of those reins and ride that pony. There's a technology guru hidden in every organization, and so talk within their operation and find out who's intrigued by it, who would be eager to take the responsibility of looking at options and then implementing what was decided to be implemented. It doesn't always have to, be the decision maker that does the implementation, and usually is not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And usually this is a project that involves multiple generations on your operation. You have to find the right person at the right time. But if you have that set up and you have that, plan in action, I think this is a really influential technology, not only for the greater industry, but for you and your own operational benefits. So I know, Phil, we've talked quite a bit. I want to make sure to give you and Fort Supply the opportunity to kind of share. You shared a couple of your value tracker programs, but are there any other ways that producers can get involved with Fort Supply? If so, if they're interested, how can they reach you and discuss a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Kyler, for asking that. So the value tracker solution is certainly one of our premier offerings and incorporates the tags and the devices and the software. Asset tracker is just that simplified data capture of what animals are present at that location at that time. Now, that might apply to just knowing what your inventory and your operation is, but it also might apply to following it geographically, much the way that the data that US CattleTrace has would be used going backward to find out where those animals were. But then Asset Tracker lets supply chain partners coordinate that inventory operation to operation. And I hate to jump back to it too often, but this project we just did on the Mexico-US border, we were able to show when those tags were put in at 2 different locations in Mexico, the time and the date stamp and specific location of the scale at Geronimo, which is the Mexico side of the border crossing, and the USDA inspection point, which was literally only about 50 yards away. And then when they hit the scale on the Santa Teresa side, when they were load out in red, and when they were delivered to the feed yard north of Amarillo. So monitoring inventory and when and where it's moving has many benefits for particularly when you go into the backgrounding feed yard and packer phase. Packers, for example, want to know what was loaded on a truck and when did it hit the road and when can we expect it. And so the UHF and low frequency version of that system we call dual tracker. And those two technologies can sit side by side and read those tags to identify the animals that were there at that location at that time. And then we're really excited about our patented Health Tracker solution. Health Tracker takes the monitoring of those animals at, for example, in a feed yard with the equipment above the water trough or the water hole, monitoring the behavior up to and around the water trough, the duration of how long they stay there, how often they come there, and looks at variations between that animal's movement that day and the previous days. The differences in that animal's movement over those days versus the difference in the group's movements, and in a very cost-effective way with a $2 ear tag. And technology that total spend is certainly under $6 a head. You're able to get a sick animal detected 24 to 48 hours in advance of them showing visible symptoms. And as I said, that we just received last year the patent on that solution. We're very excited about the future of Health Tracker. How to get in touch with us? They can go to the website. I'll give my personal information here if someone wants to call or email me directly. My cell phone number is 859-421-1566. And my email address is plawler, Lawler, at fort-supply.com. Don't forget the dash. And Kyler, if you want to put that on a screen, feel free to do that. Yep, and I look forward to talking to anybody that wants to discuss any of the topics that we covered today or specific solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll splash that information. You might be seeing it now if you're watching this video. But I also do want to mention as well, Fort Supply was one of our first partners on our U.S. CattleTrace tag store. So if you are a U.S. CattleTrace member, you can receive discounts on tags through that store, UHF tags that are distributed by Fort Supply. So there's another way that partnerships work between us. And if you get involved with them, there's the opportunity to use US CattleTrace as a way to hopefully stimulate the rest of that system as well. So Phil, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today on our conversation. I hope for those of you who are watching this to provide a little insight on the UHF technology, the EID technology, and the ways that our technology partners are utilizing that in a full system. So that way you can potentially start that process yourself. Feel free to join us for our next CattleTrace conversation. We'll be doing these conversations monthly. We look forward to you joining us for the next one. If you have any more questions about US CattleTrace, you can always reach us at our website, www.uscattletrace.org, or give us a call at 785-456-8472. We look forward to you joining us for the rest of our conversations, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Kylie.